Ladies and gentlemen, I guess good news for y'all is I'm the last person you'll hear from today. I want to address just a couple of things that Ms. Palmer and Mr. Peterson said. And I told you they were going to go with the didn't do defense, which is exactly what you just heard. What you didn't hear was about all the lies, about all the things that Quentin Tellis said. But first of all, I want to start by saying that this is Jessica Chambers. This is not Erica Chambers. This is Jessica Chambers. Living, breathing, human being on the morning, afternoon, and early evening of December the 6th. The defense tried to focus on Eric, and they hammered at you, and I fully understand that. We knew that from day one. They wanted to argue about the inadequacies of the investigation. Well, Detective Dixon didn't move the crime scene back tape far enough. Well, if you look at the pictures of Jessica from the autopsy and what the doctor says, she had no burning on her bottom, on part of her back, the lower part of her legs, and the bottom of her feet. What does that tell you? It tells you she was sitting down when she was burned. That's what that tells you. You heard the doctors talk about the splatter marks on her body. You've got the photographs that you can look at. They wanted to try and discredit Paul by saying, well, how could he be accurate if he doesn't have all of the information? Remember them saying that to you? Well, you heard Paul testify that he was there every day for 3 months. Not only was Paul there, but an analyst from the FBI was there. Remember talking about Bart Todd from the FBI being there, working with him? The U.S. Marshals were there every day, gathering information. And if you'll remember what he told y'all yesterday, he said they would get information in and they would transfer it to me electronically. Remember him saying that yesterday? So the argument, and that's the only argument they've got to try and discredit Paul, because Paul's information that he gave to y'all is huge. It's huge. Because it implicates Quentin Tellis. And she talked about the firefighters at the scene. And if you'll remember in my first closing, I said that Jessica, because two of them testified that she said, I'm thirsty. I'm thirsty. Y'all remember that? If you get back there, put the top of your tongue. Put the tongue at the top of your mouth. She wasn't able to say tease. So what if she was trying to say, tell us? Hour. Because you can look at her tongue and absolutely tell it's swollen. You can hear the doctor's testimony about the horrible condition that she was in. So maybe she wasn't trying to say Eric, maybe she was trying to say tell us. But they said she couldn't pronounce her T's because I'm thirsty, yombers. But let's go now and focus on where the evidence has led us. And when I stopped my closing, we were in October. Paul began looking at the data that he did have on Quentin Tellis and Jessica Chambers, more particularly Jessica. And he realized that the data, the RTTs, and he did say that they were not accurate sometimes depending on where you were. Remember him saying that? So what he looked at were groupings. And remember he used the example of firing a gun and the groupings coming out. You might have one way over here. And the reason he told you Quentin's weren't exactly accurate was because there wasn't a tower in the Shiloh, Cortland area like there was for Jessica. Remember he said that he had some RTTs that were completely across. There were 3 or 4 miles apart, and there was no way that he could be in 2 places at the same time. Okay? But what he did with Jessica's RTTs was to develop a pattern. And then he actually went back to places we knew she was on video or by witness testimony. And it dawned on him, wait a minute, it's off a little bit. Let's move it to where she knew she was. And it was right there at Quentin's house, the store, that area. Y'all been there. Y'all know what a tight area that is right there. But the one thing that you don't see on there at that time frame is Jessica on the camera in the store. So we know she's not there. So at that point, a decision was made to go back and talk to Quentin. Wouldn't that be logical? Because it became very apparent, especially when you look at the cell phone data from both of them and realize at the same exact time, they're there here in Batesville at the Taco Bell. Remember me asking y'all on Tuesday, when y'all drive by, take a look. It's just right by where you turn to go to your hotel. And, you know, is that an aha moment? I think so. It was for us at the time. So decisions made, Quentin needed to be talked to. So we go down there. And he's talked to. And he gives the exact same story. I didn't see her afternoon, except when I went over to hand her some money to get her something to eat. And when Paul confronted him with that, you're not on video doing that during the daylight. He says over and over again, it's daylight, daylight, daylight. It's not on there. But he shows him doing it on the 5th, the day before, which is on there. So he is adamant about Big Mike and Terrence Shegog and Alexander Carr. Man, these are my alibi witnesses. I was with Big Mike. I was driving Big Mike's car. And the question was asked of Tim on cross-examination, well, could he have been confused? Tim said, there is no doubt that we were talking about the day Jessica died. Y'all remember Tim saying that yesterday? There is no doubt with him we were talking about the day Jessica died. So he's sticking to the same story that he gave on the 10th to Barry and Tim, and he's sticking to the same story that he gave on the 18th to the FBI. Until Paul shows him, and y'all saw that on the video, Paul shows him the cell phone data that says that didn't happen. You were with Jessica in Batesville. And you see him pause and lean back. The wheels are turning, folks. Common sense will tell you that. Oh my God, I'm caught in a lie. What's the next? What have I got to tell him? Because remember, he had every opportunity on the 10th. He had every opportunity on the 18th, which was within 4 days or 3 days and 11 days of Jessica dying. He had 2 opportunities to tell the Sheriff's Department and tell the FBI that I was with Jessica, and he never did. So when confronted with this information, he completely changes his story and says, oh yeah, I did meet her in Batesville. Now he's having trouble remembering all of these things. But one thing that is incredibly shocking to me is that he was able to tell investigators what she ordered. She got food and a slushie. That's what he said. But you can't remember being with her when you're talking to the police, but by God, you remember what she ate? Doesn't add up, does it? When confronted with the physical evidence of the cell phone data, he completely changes his story and says, yeah, I was with her. But I met her in Big Mike's truck. That's all I did was meet her. And then I followed her home, or followed her back, and I went to the sandbox and was with Terrence Shegog and Alexander Carr. And then his story was that I went back and I was at my house until I went to get the green dot card. Now, Mr. Peterson would say on the green dot, well, you can't believe that because the time might be wrong. 8:26. What did Paul tell you that his cell phone data shows him in Batesville in that area at 8:26? That's uncontradicted. So we come back, and who are the first three people that we interview as soon as we get back? Wouldn't it be logical that we would want to talk to his alibi witnesses right away? Big Mike, Terrence Shegog, and Alexander Carr. And you heard the testimony from Tim that they were interviewed. And they said, no. You heard Tim say, man, or Big Mike say, I was in Nashville. Watching the Titans or driven up Saturday, the day Jessica died, to watch the Titans and the Giants on Sunday. And Tim said, we verified that through his cell phone data. Remember Tim telling you that? So at that moment, it all hits us. He's lying. He's lying. And people lie for a reason. He is purposely distancing himself from Jessica Chambers. Purposely doing it. And then you heard Tim testify that they went and talked to Grip or Alexander Carr and Terrence Shegog, and they said he wasn't at the sandbox. Once again, he is purposely distancing himself from Jessica Chambers. So a decision was made to go back and confront him with the fact that he had lied. And you saw him sitting there when Tim came in on the 27th of January and say, hey, bud, got a problem. You weren't with Big Mike, and you weren't with Terrence Shegog, and you weren't with Alexander Carr. They all said you weren't with them. And you look at him, he says, oh yeah, Big Mike was in Nashville. That's what he says. So then, finally, we get to what some semblance of the truth might be. He then says, yes, Jessica picked me up around 5:30. Which everything he begins to tell the investigator at this point is corroborated by the cell phone data. And we know that they drove out a little bit east of town. 5:34, I think, is when they got together. At 6 o'clock, we know they were in Batesville. We know from his own words that they arrived back at 6:30. And he says, yeah, my mama was home, my Uncle Sammy was home, we were in the yard. There was every opportunity for Mama and Uncle Sammy to take the stand and tell y'all, yeah, he was in my yard. They never said that. So let's go to what the FBI interview said. And I submit to you that when he was talking to the FBI, he was telling them what happened that night. He wasn't telling them what happened several days before. And I'm going to tell you why I say that. When Dustin asked him about the vehicle, how did you have sex with her? He said, well, she crawled over and I laid the seat back. Y'all saw it. Y'all seen the pictures. How was that seat when y'all saw it and when you saw the picture? I know the debris, it had caved in some when y'all saw it. But you've got picture after picture after picture of the position of the passenger seat burned, which is exactly what he told the FBI the position of the seat was when they had sex. But I'm going to submit to you, they never had sex. They never had sex. Because she was constantly turning him down. And do you remember what Keisha said? That when they got out at the sandbox, he tried to give her a hug. And it appeared that she was very disturbed by that and tried to somewhat push away from him. Do you remember Keisha saying that? That she didn't want that hug. So that's one instance where she somewhat rebuffed him. And now y'all going to have all that back here when you go deliberate. But there were multiple text messages where he was asking her for sex and she was turning him down. Never once did she say yes. Never once in those text messages did Jessica Chambers say, yes, I'll have sex with you. No, quite the contrary. She said no every time. So when he's talking to the FBI and he tells them the position of the seat, y'all saw the position of that seat that night and the way it was at the sheriff's department the next morning, just like he told the FBI. And then furthermore, he told the FBI that I've got a can of gasoline in this shed here. That's where I keep my gas. What did Matthew Simon tell you the substance was on the clothing found at the scene? Gas. But furthermore, what do you see at 7:50? You see the headlights pull in to the exact place where he told the FBI, I've got gas. The state's theory of this case is that something happened in that car at his residence, or next to his residence, because he wasn't in the driveway like he told the police. Because if he was, Mama and Uncle Sammy would have seen him. Because you remember, you see them both driving out, and they drive directly to the store. So there's no doubt who it is. But he picks her up at 5:34. They go to Batesville. They come back. They are in the car right where he told the FBI was, right where y'all walked, right where y'all stood. And something happened inside that car to where he rendered her unconscious. He had to get her out of there from his house. So a logical assumption would be that he drove her to the scene that he had already told the... And there are a lot of things that he said in this case that are telltale now. Timeline. There are a lot of things that are telltale in this case that he said himself. He said, we went by that scene where she died twice. Y'all heard him say that. And then he talks about the gas. He talks about the seat. With the timeline that we've got right now at 5:34, at 6 o'clock they're together. 6:30 they return to the area of the Tellis residence, which is shown by the cell phone data that you've got. He says she left at 7 o'clock. If you look at the videos of his residence, the only car that leaves between 6:30 and 7:10 is Uncle Sammy, who goes straight across. He then says that he didn't see Jessica again. But we know at 7:26, and y'all saw, and there's a little small light on there, but Paul put this the red circle around it. You see, and we did the day-night video for you, so you'll have a good reference. But right where you walked, you see the car come out. And immediately, Jessica phone shifts to the crime scene area. 4 minutes. At 7:42, his phone becomes active. And I think one of the most important things to think about is at the exact same time, their phones are dead. And what I mean dead, there is absolutely no activity on his phone. There's absolutely no activity on her phone. And he tells us in that interview that she left at 7 o'clock. There is absolutely no proof of her phone moving until 7:26. At 7:30, Paul testified she is on the scene where she was burned. At 7:42, Tellis calls Jessica and doesn't get an answer. He immediately sends her a text that says, "Sorry, babe, my gal's coming tonight. I can't get together with you." No response. And he also told you that while he was walking to get the car, his sister's car, is when he called Chiquita. Remember him saying that? While I was walking to get the car. We know that he got his sister's car, and at 7:50, a vehicle is seen, and you've seen the video on this. A vehicle pulls up to the shed and is there for a minute, a little over a minute. That vehicle backs out, headed back south on 51 toward the crime scene. And finally, we know at 8:04, Jessica's phone dies. Now, what I found extremely interesting was he wanted the investigators to believe that he called Chiquita, okay, and then let Jessica know that he could not meet with her tonight, even though he had been with her 16 minutes earlier, that he could not meet with her because Chiquita was coming. Now, we know from Paul's testimony that the last time he had talked to Chiquita was around 4 o'clock that afternoon. Remember Paul telling y'all that? And then the conversations with Jessica started. At 7:42, he calls Jessica unanswered. 7:43, he sends the text to Jessica. "Babe, my friend is coming in over tonight. Emma call you tomorrow. Good night, sweet dreams." If you look back through the testimony, he never, ever sent a text like that to Jessica. Ever. Ever. Tellis later says this is because his girlfriend Chiquita is coming. He doesn't talk to Chiquita till 7:46. So how in the world, when he sends this text message at 7:30, does he know Chiquita's coming when he hasn't even talked to her? This is an alibi text. This is a text to try and throw the police off of the trail. He has intentionally been distancing himself from Jessica. And then we know at 8:04 Jessica's phone goes dead, and then we know that he is at 8:26. We also know that he changed clothes immediately after getting back. You see the video or the picture when he's at the store in Batesville. 31 minutes later, he's completely changed clothes. Is it possible he had gas on him? Is it possible that he has spilled gasoline? And then you see him in the store where he tells the police, "That's where I heard," and I want y'all to please watch that closely. He said, "I heard about Jessica when I went in the store." Look at his reaction when he's in the store. None. You've got somebody animated there talking about something, and I'm going to assume, based on what he said, it's somebody talking about Jessica. He never asks a single word. He leaves, and if you see him when he comes out of the store, he's looking over his shoulder as he's leaving the store. And then what does he do? He erases everything from his phone. He never calls to check on her. He never calls to find out what's going on. He erases Jessica Chambers from his life. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, Friday night when we got through, I wanted to kind of clear my head. So I went over here to the South Panola Tupelo football game, just right over here. And during the course of the game, the cheerleaders, as they do, walked down and cheered in the area where I was sitting. And I remembered when we were talking with Ben and Lisa about Jessica, that she was a cheerleader. You know, and I thought to myself, some 4 years earlier, this is where she was standing. And I thought to myself, you know, Jessica Chambers was full of tomorrows. She was full of tomorrows. She had every right to wake up on the morning of December the 7th, to live her life. Who knows, 4 years later, she'd been 20, or 3 years later now, she'd have been 22 years old. Would she be married? Would she have kids? Would Ben and Lisa have grandkids? But that was all taken away from her around 8:04 on December 6th of 2014. What are the possibilities that in a matter of 4 minutes that Jessica gets with somebody else when we know for a fact that she was with Quentin? And all he did the entire time was to distance himself away from Jessica. Why do you do that? I submit to you that he did it because he is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.